Judges, please introduce yourselves.
Hi, I want to make sure I got it right. You guys are the West Virginia team?
Yes, ma'am.
That being said, my name is Molly Russell and I am in Morgantown at Legal Aid of West Virginia. I'm a domestic violence attorney here. Michael?
Hello. Oops, am I muted? Nope. Hello,
you're
I'm
good.
Dr. Michael Anderson. I live in northern Minnesota. I'm a retired professor and college administrator, and I work with Native American students in our local town. This is my 16th national finals. Mute.
Hi, I'm Ed Philpott. I'm a trial lawyer in central New Hampshire, and I'm now unmuted. This is my third national finals, and I have been judging We the People on a state level for about 22 years.
I'm McKenna Brown, a junior at Clay County High School.
I'm Matt Sheldon, also a junior at Clay County High School.
I'm Stephanie Naylor, and I'm also a junior at Clay County High School, and our teacher is Philip Dolbins, and our coach is Mike Mullins.
Excellent. Let's go ahead and get started. Unit 4. How have the values and principles embodied in the Constitution shaped American institutions and practices? Question 1. It would be inconsistent with the constitutional separation of the executive and legislative powers to let the prerogative or pardon power be exercised by the latter. What were the framers' reasons for giving the president the pardon power, and do you agree or disagree with them? Bullet 1. According to the framer, James Wilson, if the president abuses the pardon power, he can be impeached and prosecuted. Do you agree with Wilson? Why or why not? Bullet 2. In your opinion, what constitutes high crimes and misdemeanors?
The action of the President of the United States that completely sets aside the penalty for a federal crime is a federal pardon. Pardon symbolizes the crime's redemption, but don't necessarily expunge the sentence. Under Article 2, Section 2, the President was given the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. The pardon power is among the broadest of presidential powers. As the Supreme Court noted in case Ex parte Garland in 1866, if granted before conviction, a president's pardon prevents any of the penalties and disabilities upon conviction from attaching. If granted after conviction, it removes the penalties and disabilities and restores him to all of his civil rights. The court added that the pardon power is not subject to legislative control. Congress can neither limit the effect of a pardon nor exclude it from its exercise any class of offenders.
Founding fathers gave the president this power to soften the edges of criminal law. The founding fathers considered granting the pardon power to Congress, but as they debated, they saw that it would be best fit if it was granted to the president. This was because it was important to be able to pardon even treason, because as Hamilton argued in the Federalist Papers, there could be rebellion going on, and granting power to the president might be the most successful way to end it. Throughout time, the pardon power has been abused by presidents, the most controversial scandal in history being the Watergate scandal. This abuse of power led to Richard Nixon being the first president in history to resign from office.
The first pardon in U.S. history was when George Washington pardoned John Mitchell and Philip Weigel in 1795 when they were convicted of treason after participating in the Whiskey Rebellion. These two pardons contrast with some of the ideas that the delegates had at the Constitutional Convention. Some argue that presidents should not be given the power to pardon treason without the consent of at least one of the two houses. George Mason, one of the delegates at the convention, said, "Ought not to have the power of pardoning because he may frequently pardon crimes which were advised by himself." This panel agrees with Mason's statements of pardoning crimes that the president and themselves could be a danger to the nation. Recently in 2018, former President Donald Trump tweeted, "As been stated by numerous legal scholars, I have the absolute right to pardon myself."
Though the former president never pardoned himself, it is the opinion of this panel that self-pardoning is an abuse of power and is enough reason for impeachment. That said, we also believe that the president should not be able to give pardons to friends, family, or predecessors. In 1984, President Bill Clinton pardoned his half-brother, Roger Clinton, after being convicted of cocaine distribution. Clinton also pardoned Mark Rich, a major contributor to the Democratic Party in 2001, after he was convicted of tax evasion and oil deals with Iran during the Iran hostage crisis. These are all examples of an abuse of power from the president and should be restrictions to the pardon power.
A few prime examples of high crimes and misdemeanors would be bribery, the conviction of treason, and other normal petty crimes like larceny or verbal assault. However, the phrase high crimes and misdemeanors also implies different standards of proof and punishment than for non-officials, on the grounds that more is expected of officials by their oaths of office. Nevertheless, to truly understand and define what is meant by high crimes and misdemeanors, one must first understand that in the office of president, the president's powers have limits and are fixed by a specific set of duties. This provides the reasoning behind the fact that high crimes and misdemeanors do not have to be limited to actual crimes. They can extend to an abuse or violation of the public trust in carrying out the duties of the executive branch. One very important historical example of an impeachable offense would be when the Marshall Trilogy cases affirmed the legal and political standing of Native American nations, which was ignored by then President Andrew Jackson, who passed the Indian Removal Act unconstitutionally, which led to the Trail of Tears.
Okay, so should a family member be precluded from being pardoned solely because they're related to the president?
I don't think they should be pardoned just because they're related. Because pardons, their original intent was to bring people together, like in a time of what we mentioned, the Whiskey Rebellion in our statement. It was meant to bring people together. And I don't think pardoning your family member like Bill Clinton did is necessarily bringing people together.
So what if Bill Clinton had pardoned just Mike Anderson for cocaine trafficking and it wasn't his brother? Should that be different?
I don't believe that it should be different, because if you pardon one person for a specific crime, then you should pardon the other. But therefore, I don't believe that he should have pardoned his half-brother to begin with.
I suppose it really depends on the crime that they commit. And then that decision just comes down to the president. But also, I kind of agree that they should not be able to just pardon family members just for the fact that they are a family member.
You're muted, Mike.
Muted, sorry. They don't have the same rights. Don't they have individual citizens' rights, whether they're somebody's brother or not?
Yes, they do. But in the particular case that we're talking about, it was cocaine distribution. And I don't think that Clinton would have pardoned anyone else for cocaine distribution if it wasn't his brother.
Okay, so it's an ethical issue, is that correct?
Yes.
So if we're talking about the ability to pardon somebody for ethical issues, and you just quoted that President Trump said he has the absolute right to pardon himself. And then there was an subordination or insurrection, speech that happened. Then you could argue that there were many other things that were not the truth told with regularity. Is that also immoral enough or unethical enough to be impeached?
I believe it is. When you incite an insurrection as Trump might have done, it is a danger to the nation, and I think it is an impeachable defense. I can't talk.
So his speech was not appropriate. It was unethical. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And that's enough. So how many times can you say something that's not true as president of the United States before you get impeached?
There's no set number.
Okay.
But I also agree that it's an impeachable offense because he's misusing the trust of the public. Mm-hmm. And outright lying to your constituents, I think, should be an impeachable offense. It's just not right.
And when the lies are harmful to the citizens of America or people, like, for example, the people that worked at the Capitol that day, I think it is grounds for impeachment too.
Okay.
And could you fill me in a little bit more on this this concept you talked about of the heightened expectation based on the oath of office?
Well, elected officials are just held to a higher standard than, I would say, normal citizens. And that's because of the oath of office they take. It requires them to, I guess, be better citizens themselves, which holds them to a higher standard.
I have a question about the treaty that you brought up, the Trail of Tears, the Indian Removal Act. I wasn't sure I fully understood your application of that. Could you explain that further?
The Supreme Court ruled that President Andrew Jackson, his acts of removing the Indians were unconstitutional. And I think that's an example of an impeachable offense. He's going against the rulings of the Supreme Court.
Okay. I got it. Thank you.
So when you talk about this concept of crimes advised by himself, the president should not be able to pardon for crimes advised by himself. What's the effect of that? Say you were to adopt the theory that some of President Trump's campaign officials or advisors, Roger Stone and others, were pardoned because they protected the president with regard to the 2016 election. Should those pardons stand?
I don't believe, I'm not really sure where I stand on that, but because on one hand, they, like you said earlier, or someone said earlier, they have the rights as every other citizen, but also at the same time, they were his advisors and they could be keeping something or anything like that from getting them out of trouble or Trump out of trouble.
Another thing would be during the campaign of Donald Trump, his campaign officers are basically not according to the Constitution, but most of the time they will break the law just for his campaign, just because he can pardon them.
So give me some more examples. This quote you started early on in your session was from history, that it was, pardon was designed to soften the edges of crime. Is that what your team said? What kinds of crimes do you think were the original intent? What were they softening?
I think they were softening crimes, and we use the Whiskey Rebellion, like treason, to bring people together. And I think that was the founders' original intent, to soften the conflict between these people.
And is that different from what we're doing now?
Absolutely.
In what way?
Obviously, when the Constitution was written, the founding fathers never envisioned the pardon power being used in the way it is today and how it's been used more recently. And it now basically allows people working for the president, like I mentioned earlier with Donald Trump's campaign, to commit crimes that would help his campaign, knowing that they can be pardoned for it afterwards.
Okay.
So what's your solution to combat that? If they're knowingly committing crimes because they know they're going to be pardoned, what's the solution?
I would say not allowing one man to have all the authority over the pardon power. Maybe a simple 2/3 majority vote by Congress could be good.
And with the simple 2/3 majority, when Congress votes, you can make sure like pardons aren't being bought either, or
Good. Finish your sentence there. Put a period there. Time has just run out.
sorry.
All right. It's go ahead, Samantha.
Step. Okay.
Oh, it's Molly. That's sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
It's okay. All right. Good job, guys. You did it. Yay. And you had a judge from West Virginia. So I'm here with you, at least in the state, right? Okay. So I liked that you guys would say, if you didn't know, I'm not sure where I stand on that. The idea that, one, you're honest. I know when I'm in the courtroom and I don't know the answer to something and I have to be like, Your Honor, I'll look that up. I think that that's a good practice saying, I'm not sure where I stand on that. Here's the two opinions I could go down. I appreciated that. I will suggest if you move forward that your end of your opening argument have a poignant end. I felt like you had a lot of strong points. You talked about a lot of different things, but that your ending could have packed a punch, something a little bit more to stick with me. And one second. Oh, I appreciated you bringing in kind of a modern form of communication. The Twitter point, that's a point that we haven't heard today about lies and whether those are impeachable offenses is a lie. So I appreciated that. Good job. Okay, Ed?
Sure. Thank you very much. I did enjoy the fact that you gave us a little insight into your thought process. When you say something like, I'm not certain how I feel about that, but here on one hand or here on the other hand. And I think you've stayed consistent in where you came out on that throughout the process. So that's very helpful, and it's good to see. I thought it was a good conversation. I think that in some instances you might want to be a little bit more firm. Yes, however, or no, I don't think that's true, however, and go on to explain it a little bit. So that might be just a little something to think about as you move forward. I think seeing what your thought process is good, but then pick one. And it doesn't matter, it's not about being right or wrong. I think it's about picking that position and articulating your support for it. Thank you.
Good. I like the fact you brought up ex parte Garland. I really like the notion, I'm still thinking about it, softening the edges of conflict and crimes, et cetera, is a very good way to approach the idea of pardoning. I guess that's why we follow a lot of what those guys were thinking about. I like the fact that you brought up the Indian Removal Act. As you may remember from my intro, I work every day with members of the Anishinaabe people, the Ojibwe people, and they take their treaties seriously. The one thing that really made me think, and I'm going to have to think about this one later on, is that when we talk about holding politicians, elected officials to higher standards, does that also mean, since they're at this higher level, that we don't have to think of them to be impeached or removed from office? Because I always also learned about the rule of law. If everything applies equally, if we're all under the law, then why would we have to hold them to a higher standard? Just hold them to the law. So that's what I'm going to struggle with, and I want to thank you for that. You did a good job, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We'd like to congratulate the